Then had the churches rest through all Judea and Galilee and Samaria, and were edified, and walking in the fear of the Lord, and in the comfort of the Holy Ghost were multiplied. Therefore my heart is glad, and my glory rejoiceth. My flesh also shall rest in hope. Come unto me, all ye that labour and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Evening, everybody. Oh, that's a nice little response. If you've ever heard me preach before, you'll know I like to use Menti. So we're going to go to menti.com on your devices, and we've got our lovely AD team. You've got this, Peter. Hit escape. Cancel. That one? There, yeah, cancel that one. Yes, blue button. And we're full screen. Yes, okay, amazing. So, as many of you know, I am a teacher. At present I teach high school students who have high support needs, that are a range of conditions including autism and ADHD. Today's message, if you didn't guess from the three kind of randomly selected verses, they're not that random, but the key word in there was rest, and it's going to be in 3 parts today. I'm going to have some definitions and what it means rest as a remainder versus rest as dwelling. Part 2 will be a little bit about our nervous system. There's an asterisk there because I am not a doctor at all. I have several family members that are Dr. Neeskens. That is not me. So there's a little caveat there. And then we'll have a little summary about Jesus and safety. If everyone's got a nice image of Jesus wearing a safety hat, we're good to go. So, if you would like to join in on our interactive presentation today, that's where we go. And I'm going to do it as well on my phone because I can't actually read a lot of the smaller text that's up there from over here. Menti or Mentimeter doesn't really collect data. You don't need to log in or have a, what's the word I'm looking for, an account with them to be able to interact. I'm a big fan of it because it makes things like this a little bit more fun. The code is not working. 1, 3, 5. What does the top one say? 8592 1062.
8592.
Join using 1357. Yep. Yeah, do the thumbs up if you're in, because that's all you should see. You should see the same slide as me. You should see the slide that says the wrong code. That's a nice little trick. So to repeat, what was the code? The tiny code? 8592 1062. Thank you. Thank you. This is just a joy of technology. Does anyone need a little more time? We are going to keep going. So you should see a little slide and then a thumbs up. Okay, I'm going to the next slide. Okay, what is rest? So we're going to get to a bit of, as many of you know, I like a good definition. Content warning for this sermon. It's not a big content warning, but if you have been struggling with chronic stress and or fatigue, the topic of rest might be quite sensitive to you. It's sensitive to me because I'm finding the rest I am getting does not feel adequate, and talking about it can sometimes be quite difficult. So I would like to give that little bit of a flag. So the word rest appears 275 times in the King James Version, and that's the reason, there's a reason I gave the King James Version, with a variety of definitions. When thinking about what to speak about today, I thought about what's been on my mind and my body a lot is how do I know when to push or persist through something that's difficult versus when I should draw back, because pushing can often lead to collapse, fatigue or burnout instead of the desired growth. So this brought me to the concept of energy, feeling energized and recharging. And then it confronted me with how difficult it is to recharge in a world that's constantly demanding. Where are we? So, yes, a world that's constantly demanding for our attention, our time and our money. I've shared before on the topic of margins and the Sabbath, so how we make time for rest and pausing. This sermon is somewhat a bit more of a deep dive about what rest actually is, physically, mentally, spiritually. We also have we've heard 3 Bible verses from the King James Version. I use this version because I'm a nerd. And the reason I use it, and I call myself a nerd, is it allows me to use one of my favourite reference books, which is a concordance, which lists how many times each word appears in the Bible, and it's the King James Version, because that was the first English version of the Bible. And I use this a fair bit when trying to understand God's Word, so I can better grasp the language that was used in context, because as we know, what we're reading wasn't originally written in English. And even when it was translated into English, it's not the English we know today. So I use the King James Version, my concordance, and my very interesting neurospicy brain to hopefully discern some deeper meaning and understanding. So definition, what do we all think rest is? So this is a little interactive. You can enter a word, you can enter multiple things. It's going to come up as a nice little beautiful word cloud here. I'm going to go, one thing I associate with rest is sleep. Yeah, there we go. Please wait for the presenter to change slides. Well, that's annoying. So yeah, taking time, re-energizing, peace, recuperation, quiet, being asleep, recovery, recharging, chill. I like that. The idea that you're in a freezer. No, not in this heat? Okay. This is good. Does everyone feel like their definition of rest is kind of popping up somewhere? Stopping. I like stopping. And then sometimes I fail to start again. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it kind of this nebulous idea? Or is it more tangible? So English, the language which we currently have the joy of speaking, also known as the shower drain magpie of Frankenstein's languages, because it draws from everything and goes, behold, I'm a language with 6 different spellings for the same words, derives the word rest from 2 branches. The first is Old English, and originally of Germanic origin. Rest or restan, from the meaning of the league or mile, as in you would walk a mile and then you would rest, you would stop. Makes sense. Walk a bit, take a break. The other kind of stream of language that our word rest comes from is from Latin. Then into Middle English from Old French, rester or resteur, meaning to remain or stare, to stand back, perhaps. I like that one, so it's like standing back from something. I'm taking a rest from the microphone. Yes. Or to stand apart. Now, from our good old Google and many dictionaries combined, we have mainly 2 groups. One's verbs, one's nouns. The verbs are cessation or ceasing, ending of an activity in order to relax, sleep or recover strength. That's the ideal, right? We go to sleep, we get the energy. I'm not finding that's 100% working for me at present. Some of you may also feel the same way. Be placed or supported on, e.g. elbow rested on a chair. At present, you are all, this current congregation is resting their backsides on chairs. You are resting, yes. To depend on, e.g. the future of the company rested on the profits it made. So we've got a level of dependency. Our noun definitions are our things. A period or instance of rest, to take a rest. A pause or silence in music or speech. Note the ta-ta-tas of all our music teachers out there. Yeah? No one's seen the joke? There's a little squiggle and someone's like, you're under arrest. No, I should have put that in there. Yeah, that's a good one. a motionless state and an object of support, e.g. footrest, car rest, etc. And you might go, why is she banging on about words? Because words are important. They're the vessel by which we understand things. My favourite, because again I'm a nerd, is in physics. An object is said to be at rest if it does not change its position with respect to its surrounding in time. It makes me think of a rock. Silent, comfortable, unbothered, immovable. However, the Bible has this word, as I said, 275 times, and within these 275 times it has 20 different definitions. And again, this is in the King James Version, not other English versions. So, 20 different definitions in Hebrew, 9 different definitions in Greek. So this is why words are important, because we've got to figure out what that actually means when we talk about rest biblically. And the use of the word rest is often metaphorical, which is great for my very literal brain, or is used in a metaphor. So these definitions range from silencing or quieting. Sometimes this is peaceful, but sometimes it's very destructive. In very powerfully, forceful sense, silencing. It can mean the remains or the leftover elements of something, the place where someone dwells or rests. It can mean resting carnally, or to cease, or to lay down, or to lay someone or something to rest, as in the end of its cycle or life. Or to stop and observe, e.g. the Sabbath, or to, my favourite, thinking of a little bird, is to perch. A flutter and a perch. The most common references are ones that refer to quietude, calmness and peace. So I think for most of us the idea of rest is quite positive when we think of those things. One favourite of mine is from one of the verses Justin read today, which is from Acts 9. The context of this verse is interesting. So the verse that was read, a little bit out of context, then the churches had rest throughout all Judea and Galilee and Samaria, and they were edified. You go, well, what on earth does that mean? Bit of context, because I didn't want to put the whole chapter in, and I really want to talk about that verse, is that Saul has gone through some pretty intense, persecution of the young Christian church, and then goes through a radical conversion, becomes Paul, and then is like, nah, Jesus is it. That's what we've got to do. And everyone's like, but you were just kind of like at the opposite end over there. I think of someone who has radically opposite beliefs to me and is now completely aligned with what I want to do and wants to do that to the extreme. That's kind of, think of Saul to Paul kind of conversion. So this verse comes after his kind of transformation journey, his interacting with the young church, and then him going about spreading the gospel, making peace with some of the apostles. And we then see this big stressor, Saul, turned into a huge strength, Paul, and we see rest and peace. The word that's used here is irene. It's the Hebrew equivalent is shalom. The definition is one of complete harmony. Contextually, we're seeing this in a community, because the next verse, we also see this leads to the church growing. Take note, big stress gets removed, becomes big advocate. And yes, there's some tension naturally, but when the dust settles, we see peace and then growth. So thought one for today is, when true rest happens, does growth also happen? Is that a natural consequence? Maybe. We'll put a pin in that. I'm going to put this up here. So these are the biblical translations for reference. So there's the Acts 9 there. The next passages I chose for today are about the where. Where do we find rest? Even if it's a version of this peace or the other versions we see up here, which means to refresh or give rest or a place to dwell, where do we find it? It's like, cool, I'm keen. Where do I go? These are a lot more, verses are a lot more metaphorical than the one in Acts. David says he will rest in hope of the Lord. Well, it doesn't sound like a footrest to me. How does one rest in hope? Where's the pool? Pool of hope? Do I go and swim in it? No? Okay. And Matthew, Jesus offers us to rest in him. My literal brain conjures up some odd imagery here, so I'm going to pause, because the idea of physically resting in Jesus is, I'm going to pause for a hot second and take a rest, if you will. How do we approach the concept of rest? I think, personally, there's a bit of a weird attitude to it in our society. And I know it pervades my thinking, and I'm sure it pervades at least one or two others in the congregation, possibly more. Some attitudes that we often hear and are bombarded with are, you need to work so hard to attain wealth, so much wealth, that you don't have to work anymore and you can rest and have leisure all the time. This hustle culture demands that we constantly do, and yes, starting new things and starting up new things and seeing early growth is fun, but when we don't pause every now and again, the message I know I've often internalized is you aren't doing enough to achieve said wealth, said goal, you need to go harder, which is not a helpful one. Slogans like just do it, go hard, go home, no pain, no gain, leave very little room for time to recharge, and I personally find it exhausting. The flip side we see of this as a bit one of envy. Look at the awesome thing I'm doing a thing to rest. Again, bit contradictory. Phrases like from where you'd rather be. We have this glorification of an exotic location for a holiday, the elsewhere or the grass is greener syndrome. We are influenced to envy those who have time and resources for such leisures and pleasures. And if we are fortunate enough to have carved out time for a holiday, there's definitely the pressure to show that off. It's like you've worked hard, you've earned yourself a holiday, and you're on holiday with other people, and I now need to show this off, there's photos, I've got to keep doing this thing. And I think even though our brains know that that's not what we want, there is pressure to do so. I know from my particular brand of neurotype, there remains a paralysis from overtasking. Rest only comes if there's time left over. The remains, if you will. I know for me that when I finally sit down, my brain can be so busy or so completely blank that rest simply doesn't arrive. The I'll sleep when syndrome is also perpetuated by the need to occasionally escape from this constant demand. I will be the first to admit that staying up late to play a game, read a book, or get lost in a TV series is something that I want to do. Like, it's how our brains are wired. But these are external factors. We also have internal factors and learned mechanisms about being human givers and doers, not just human beings. Many of us have been socialised to believe that our worth is in what we can give or do for others. Many of us have been taught that inherent worth is in what we achieve and what milestones we pass. And I'm not saying that giving to others or doing things for people or setting goals and achieving them is inherently bad. It isn't. It's actually very healthy. But the mindset of if I'm not giving, doing, or achieving, I'm not worth something, that's the unhealthy kind of part about it. And I know for me, I struggle with that a lot, and I don't feel good if I haven't achieved. But I have to realise that Jesus doesn't struggle feeling good about me when I can't achieve, when I can't do. God doesn't struggle with that at all. They love me and you just as much as when you are an object at rest without external force acting on it. They love you just as much when you're in activity and doing things as when you are the peaceful, undisturbed rock by the stream. I was also researching phrases or insights about this topic, and I came across a lot of memes like no rest for the weary, or I can sleep when I'm dead. And I think I took that to the extreme in university, staying up very late, completing projects. But these start to feel a little bit cruel when you're a person who struggles to regain their energy. However, there was an excerpt I found online that I thought resonated very deeply. And this is by Jeff Foster in his book, The Way of Rest. "Oh, sweet little boy, beloved girl, you are so overwhelmed by life sometimes," excuse the binary, but just quoting. "I know by the enormity of it all, by the vastness of the possibilities, by the myriad of perspectives available to you. You feel so pressed down sometimes by the unresolved questions, by all the information you are supposed to process and hold, and by the urgency of things. You are overcome by powerful emotions trying to make it all work out somehow, trying to get everything done on time, trying to resolve things so fast, even trying not to try at all. You are exhausted, sweet one, exhausted from all the trying and the not trying. You are struggling to trust life again. It's all too much for the poor organism, isn't it? You are exhausted and you long to rest. And that is not a failing of yours, not a horrible mistake, but something wonderful to embrace. So I long for rest. I don't know about you, but I do. And Jesus says I can... That's all right. If you need to take a moment to silence your phone, that's fine, or I can keep going and can pretend it's not there. Hold on a second, I've lost my place. I have a mortgage? Sorry. I want to hear. I know Jesus says I can find rest in him. Cool. He says, come to me all who are weary and I will give you rest. Okay, awesome. What does that mean though? Like, he means I will give you reprieve, I will give you ease. That's the translation. Refreshment. But is he going to hand it out? Like, is it a refreshment cookie? Like, how do you give rest? The Greek word used here is anapao. If anyone is a Greek linguist, I'm so sorry. Meaning rest, refresh, or give rest, but this is a little self-fulfilling in the definition. It doesn't give some practical insight. So I look to the Psalm. David says, therefore my heart rejoiced, my tongue was glad, moreover my flesh will also rest in hope. And the two words there I'm looking at are rest and hope. Rest here is about a physical place, because David is also talking about his flesh, his body, his physicalness. Dwelling in hope, which is betach in the Hebrew. And this translates to dwelling in safeness and the assurance of security. So physically existing safely. Rephrase, my body will exist in safety. Okay, that's something we can work with. So is the meaning to rest to be safe? Is David actually saying, my body and my being will be safe with God? Is Jesus actually saying, with me, you are safe, you can relax, you can let go, you can cease doing things, and you can just be? I really hope so, because this is something that feels a little bit more tangible than resting in Jesus. That phrase doesn't feel tangible to me, but you can be safe with me and you can let go and you can exhale or relax. Feels a little bit different. Okay, pause. I've done a lot of talking. Check-in time. Raise your hand if you're tired. Thank you for your honesty. You're a good congregation. Raise your hand if you're wired. Hey, thank you. Nice. Raise your hand if you don't know, because checking in with your body is not a thing you do very often. Yeah, nice. So, let's see how we track. I feel rested. Here's our next one. This is a little scale, so the top button says 50 to 75. Oh, they're not in order. That's horrid. I'm so sorry. They're not in order on my phone. They are on the screen. 25% increments, less than 25%. 25 to 50, 50 to 75, more than 70, most of the time. And when I think about most of the time, think about maybe the past 3 months, as this encompasses holidays, Christmas, which are kind of at opposite ends of the energy spectrum for a lot of us. It also encompasses getting back to work after having perhaps some time off for many of us. So I think it's a good window, thinking from October-ish. How have you felt? I think I have felt in the 25 to 50% range. My actual might be between 50 and 75. So sometimes we feel less energized than we actually are. I don't mind which one you put up there, but we can see that our congregation is tired. Yeah. That's very understandable. I empathize with that a lot. So our part 1 summary, rest. So this is the remains versus the dwelling. Rest is not the thing that's left over at the end. And I think that's what makes us feel really tired. It's the idea of resting happens after. Rest, it's also not the thing we do when we avoid the demands. That was a big kind of insight. I avoid demands a lot because, demand avoidance and procrastination are a thing. Rest is not procrastination. Sadly, I think most of us can feel that quite well. Rest happens, however, when we are safe. The rest that Jesus offers us is a reprieve and ease from the demand. It's not an avoidance, but he allows us to be kept safe and we can let go. So what does that actually look like for our bodies and our brains? Something a little bit more practical. So now for some science asterisks. To feel safe, we need to be in what I like to talk to my students about and with my friends and with myself about. This is what's called our window of tolerance. However, this isn't a funny little meme. Do you ever sleep so hard that you wake up and you need another nap from just sleeping so hard? Yes. Yep, that's me. That's very much me. So the nervous system, asterisks. Where do we feel safe? The thing that regulates the feeling of safety in our bodies is what's known as our nervous system. There's a lot of different things that play into that. There are also a bunch of medical people in the room who are welcome to correct me if and when I am wrong, but this is my understanding, so take it with a grain of salt. How do I rest? Is there a rest day? Where's my rest muscle? How do I exercise it? So I thought that was amusing as well. So this is one of my favourite images, and if you can't see it very clearly, we have a nice blue square, that's known as our rectangle, our window of tolerance. We have a nice beautiful little sine wave or like curvy wave with a unicorn like floaty on it. That's us floating down the river of everyday demand, stress and life, and our window of tolerance is where we exist in terms of our ability to cope with everyday demand, with the ups and downs of life, with anxieties and with stresses. When we are outside our window of tolerance, we become, this is the D word, dysregulated. So for our neurospicy individuals here, they may have heard this a fair bit before about dysregulation and how do we re-regulate. Dysregulation is brought on by usually stress of some kind or a stressor. So the window of tolerance is where you rest and digest. It's your parasympathetic nervous system at work. So oddly enough, I don't think we can actually rest outside our window of tolerance when we're in hyperarousal, lots of stuff going on, really high energy, or hypoarousal, really low, really flat. Like the battery just won't charge at either end. So when someone gets outside this window, yes, we end up with our stress responses. Anyone name the 4 Fs? This is my teacher. Very good. Thank you to row here and row back there. So that was fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fight. Yes, I will face this stressor, but my body and brain are going to be wired about it. Facing this stressor will hopefully get rid of it. That's the fight response. Flight. I need to avoid this stress. I need to run away. I need to make distance. That will reduce this stress. Freeze. My body and brain can neither fight nor flee, so we're just going to freeze, wait it out. And sometimes that is the safest thing that your brain can do for you. Fawn. I'm going to give in to this thing, person, causing stress, because giving into it will make the stress go away. So all of these stress responses are your brain trying to keep you alive, surviving. Sometimes they're not effective, sometimes they're very effective. This is my understanding, and it's not perfect. These stress responses are designed for survival when under threat or perceived threat. So if someone's body or brain perceive constant and or intense threat, your window of tolerance can often start to close and get quite small in general because you're constantly in survival mode and reacting out of a stress response. So sometimes the last minute rush that everyone's like, oh, I can only get it done if at the last minute, you've trained yourself to get things done when you're stressed as a stress response. So it's just a really interesting space I love talking to my students about as well. However, I'm not here to talk about trauma management or stress management, but it is good to know that the window of tolerance is where we can learn new things. It's very hard to learn new things when we're outside of it. Where we can reason, thank you, prefrontal cortex, using logic, and understand our emotions in a regulated way, where resting and digesting happens. For those of you who, like me, have dealt with chronic stress before, stomach upset is kind of hand in hand with those things. So window of tolerance can also help with digestion. It's not the cure-all, but it can help. And it's also where we will see a lot of our own positive growth. So outside this window is often very uncertain and or intense, both at the low and high end. And I know our congregation I think okay, reasonably well. We have many people who have varied and broad experiences of dealing with stressful situations, with trauma, and with the, not even need, but like the survival instinct of getting through. So I want to ask us a couple of questions, because I am not, contrary to sometimes I sound like it, but I am not the fount of all knowledge, ever. So how do we deal? What brings you back into your window, without the W at the end? I'm so sorry. Window. What brings you in your window? So what strategies do you have to stay regulated? Some classic examples that some people like to offer unsolicitedly are, have you tried yoga? Have you tried meditation? Yes and yes, and they are great strategies. As we can see on the screen, I cannot read that tiny. Sleep, breathing exercises, music. Some people have exercise, singing. Oh, I like singing. Singing's great. Playing music, yoga, more music, nap, walking. Walking's great for that kind of bipedal movement. Going outside in nature. Yep. Awesome. I think if you see one up there, you should be able to like it. No, it just says wait for slide change. I swear I ticked you could like stuff. And all of us, I think, can probably list one thing they do that makes them feel a bit better. That's your brain and body saying, hey, I want to regulate. Let's try X, Y, Z. Anyone found a new one up there they want to try? Anyone's like, absolutely not. I will not try running. I am not joining a run club. Ew. Blanket fort. Yeah, nice. Cool. Where did I get up to? So, if you want to widen your window of tolerance, because you might feel it's narrow, you can practice some of these regulation strategies. A lot of them are about moving stress through your body. And scientifically, and I've got this from the book called Burnout by the Nagoski sisters. One's public health educator and the other is a performance musician. Moving stress through your body, the most effective way to do that is exercise. I was devastated to hear this. Like, absolutely devastated. But it does move stress through your body, the chemical stress through your body. All of these as well help move stress through the body and help us stay regulated. I do recommend that book if you want to look into further things around burnout. This is very different from person to person. Intense exercise actually stresses me out. So I have to make sure the exercise I do engage in is light to moderate. Because if you got me doing burpees, you're going to be 10 minutes later, I'm going to cry in the corner. Because crying is also a good regulation strategy. Seems to be a lot of, I think I grew up with a lot of shame around crying, but sometimes a good cry, yeah, it's great. So if this is around regulation and keeping our window of tolerance open, let's rephrase, what does safety look like? Because if we're not safe, we can't rest. So what does safety look like? Is it different to these strategies? Is safety how we feel when we're regulated and we have the space to be able to let go? We can be regulated and not feel safe, absolutely, but this is the food for thought. So for me, what does safety looks like when I don't have to pretend or put on a front of okayness, particularly if I'm not okay. Like, I will say I'm okay if I'm okay, but pretending gets a lot of us through the day sometimes. So when I don't have to, that's when I feel safe. And it's finding people, persons, and communities to feel safe around. And I've definitely felt that within this community. But finding that is also risky, because a lot of us have experienced unsafe people, unsafe communities. And our brains have trained us to survive and protect, and sometimes in not the most logical of ways. But if we come back to our biblical content, if Jesus is saying you can rest in me, which really means with Jesus you are safe, you can let down the wall of protectiveness. He is not a threat, trademark. How do we access that when Jesus is not physically, not yet at least to my knowledge, with us? So Oh, sorry. What does safety look like? I missed one. What does safety look like? Is it different? Is it different to being regulated? Go on again. Go back. I don't know if I can go back. Something, waiting in progress. Oh yes, there we go. I voted on. Oh, did I not finish that slide? I swear I did. I can't vote there. One vote left. Submit votes. No. I just get a thumbs up. No. Responses, with votes, without votes. I had a bunch there, which was what does safety look like? And then you could vote on other people's responses. But again, technical issues. So my apologies. Does anyone want to shout out what safety looks like to them? We're not bold enough to do that. We don't feel safe enough. I think safety is also where you feel free of judgment, or the free of the risk of judgment, perhaps. So, hold on, here we go. So yes, what brings us closer to a person? What does safety mean in Jesus? We're at part 3. So to summarise part 2, nervous system, we need to regulate to feel rest. We need to feel safe to feel rest. We have plenty of strategies to do that. They're quite practical. What does that mean to be safe with Jesus? So I've listed a few to rank. Hopefully this does work. Yes. They are a lot larger on your device, but on the screen we have prayer, reading, journaling, walking / physical activity, being in nature. What brings us close to Jesus, to God, in our faith, in ways that are safe, that feel restful and regulated? I used to attend a charismatic Pentecostal church. That's where God found me and said, I'm real deal. I'm like, ah. It was very loud and the music was lovely, but very intense. And I don't know if my nervous system was regulated. We've got strongly agrees. So this will amalgamate everybody's kind of opinion. So if you rate, where you kind of find yourself, you can just put 5s for everything or 1s for everything. You can also skip it if you don't know or don't want to. But being in nature, creating something, that one's pretty strong for me. Closing my eyes and just breathing. Sharing food with people. Yeah. Being in nature's scoring pretty high. Sharing food with people. Prayer's also up there. Talking to others about God and Jesus is currently in the lead. Awesome. Who likes these little graphics? I do. It's pretty cool to see what other people think and go, oh, that's horrid, I don't want to share food with anyone. People should go away. Whereas then we have our foodie club that's like, that's our ministry. We want to share food all the time. For me, sometimes it's all of these. Sometimes all of them feel quite inaccessible because I am dysregulated in some way. Sometimes I do these things not necessarily to feel rested in God, but just to feel more rested or connected with myself, and that's okay too. I know for many of our congregation, some of them have known and followed Jesus since a very young age. Some of them came to God later in life. Some are still in that process. So you don't necessarily need to associate all of doing these things with resting in God, but I think it's really great that a lot of us do feel that that's what brings us closer. Okay, I've got maybe 30 seconds left. Both connecting with self and or God might mean I need to be a bit more intentional though. Whether this is noticing more in my day-to-day activity, the paint by numbers I do in that creating aspect, whether it's the deliberate stopping of one thing to stand back from a thought or activity and to try something else to connect. If the roots of the word rest, to stand back or to walk a mile and stop, are true, it's actually built into our language when we talk about rest and energy. There's a doing and there's a stopping. If the biblical meanings of the word rest are true, resting can mean space to grow as a community, as individuals, because a big stress has been removed. But if we can't have that stress removed, resting in God and Jesus is the safe place to be refreshed. I hope that seeing each other's responses today and to today's questions has helped you feel more connected, given you something new to try, or at least sparked some thoughts or ideas about how rest in general might look for you, and that God offers safety, refreshment, and peace. If you zoned out at the beginning or at any point throughout this sermon, here's the too long didn't read version. Point 1, rest helps with growth. Point 2, God offers us rest. They offer us a place of spiritual and emotional safety, and this can help our bodies feel safe and vice versa. Point 3, it is hard to rest outside our window of tolerance, but there are plenty of tools and people who can help with this. I strongly advocate for our wonderful mental health professionals whom I have learned so much from in my young life and my adult life. And there are new and gentle things that we can try to feel rested, safe in ourselves and or in God. God bless.